guest, Robert Entin from Vornado, both CIO and AVP, was just talking to me off camera for a moment about balancing exuberance and caution. You are in a unique position to help us analyze the technology trends, because in addition to being the CIO and EVP, you are someone with a deep knowledge and experience of software and programming and computers themselves. And that's why I think maybe you're able to have a more realistic view, because you don't just understand what the technology does, you also understand how it's made and how it works. So, starting off globally, what are the biggest trends you're seeing here at Realcomm 2018, specifically as it pertains to real estate software?
Well, hi Jerry.
Hi, good to see you.
Good to see you
always.
Another exciting year at Realcomm.
Yeah. Why?
A lot of new products each of the last few years. There are more and more new products addressing specialized, unique needs in the industry. Yeah. And we're trying to see whether we can, where will this industry be disrupted? And the answer is all around us. People are, have interesting and unique new applications more for the building operations at this point, either the IoT side or even just the people who are running the buildings. The corporate side gets less, less innovation, because really the last bastion of innovation was in the building ops area.
Right.
I think in the last few years, in the next few years, that's what we'll continue to see is how do you operate these buildings more efficiently, provide better tenant amenities, and make the buildings more occupant friendly is certainly the buzzword that's out.
Buzzword versus reality. Has IoT deeply and in a profound way really affected Vornado's bottom line?
Deeply and profoundly are the keywords there. Yeah. It has affected the bottom line. We have some fairly sophisticated demand response programs. We've been monitoring energy for years, and it's a bit tricky. There are a lot of things you can do. We have two areas. One is managing demand response, because that's where you really save a lot of money on electricity. And the other is just putting in place capital projects that have an ROI. And we have a group, our sustainability group in New York, very good at what they do. And so they chug away building by building at that side of it. But the shaving demand response and also having buildings become power plants is the next frontier. So we have a cogen plant at One Penn. We have battery storage in a few buildings. We're doing more and more with that. We have solar on some roofs. But the key is going to be in the future as the grid is overwhelmed with demand, particularly when you get to the electrification of transportation. That will do a lot more to put strain on the grid. I think it's going to come to a point where the buildings themselves are going to have to serve as mini power plants / contributors to the health of the grid. And you're going to find out that landlords actually can make money if they have energy storage facilities within their buildings. I think batteries will become a staple in buildings, and the ability to store when it's cheap and use when it's expensive, contribute by either used to shave your demand response or used to sell back to the grid, will become a norm in the next 10 years.
What are some of the, sorry, go ahead.
So many of the ISOs, which are the independent service operators that in the country, have been deregulating at a fast pace in terms of what it takes to contribute back to the grid, at what level of megawatts. And so it used to be that unless you're a fairly major power contributor, you really couldn't participate in any programs. And all of the ISOs are more and more now legislating where they'll lower the amount that is required to contribute to the grid. So I think that's going to has opened up the conversation. We have conversations with a few startups, and I talk to people all the time. But to me, that's one of the inevitable transformations the technology is going to bring. The way power is one of the toughest resources. When you think about where the power is generated and how it's distributed, the capital requirement to increase that capacity is in the billions and billions of dollars. And maybe the network itself is good enough if you have people contributing from the bottom part of the tree, as opposed to the top, we'll call it the top part, the leaves, as opposed to just the trunk.
Right.
Making the trunk bigger is very expensive.
So it really behooves governments to allow the individual businesses to contribute from the bottom up.
Big time.
Yeah.
And in fact, the power companies are doing as much to pressure legislation to allow it. The Con Eds in our world, the Con Eds of the world, they want it because they recognize how much it's going to save them in the future.
And they resisted it deeply at first. I mean, they did not want it at all.
They need it. They need it. And they know they need it.
What else does the industry need? Where else are we going to see changes?
Well, so go back to the promise versus deliver.
Yeah.
I love these conferences because the people speak in very flowery terms about what's going to happen, and life is wonderful. And I don't want to be the downer, always saying, guys, it's not that easy.
Yeah.
And it always takes longer than you think. But I come from the side that is in the kitchen cooking the meal. And you probably never eat a meal if you saw what they did in the kitchen to cook it, right? So it's never as easy as it looks, and things never fit together as they're supposed to. But I think the key for the audience is to understand these things take time. Right. Adoption takes time. Some things catch more quickly than others, some don't. But probably the two biggest buzzwords, and I spend some of my time thinking and talking on, is AI and blockchain. AI, of course, is already creeping its way into lots of sectors. And I think the most natural, two or three very natural areas, which you already see, are running buildings.
Right.
Buildings will become self-tuning. Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense because there's enough big data there to analyze. Leasing opportunities, deals, residential sales, lots of opportunities there. So I was at a conference a bunch of weeks ago when somebody said, what did they say? Something about it's a soy meal, AI and blockchain are like soy meal, almost tasteless. And I said, no, I think AI is like that, but I think blockchain is like chili. It's going to have a sharper taste to it, because I think AI is going to creep its way in to all areas of our business over time. So I don't think it will feel as transformational as blockchain will. Blockchain, to me, is layered on top of the internet today, as the internet was layered on top of nothing in 1999, 1998. That had tremendous failures because at that point you laid this massive piece of roadwork on top of no content whatsoever. Right. Everybody thought content would be there in no time at all. The answer is we're 18 years later, there's a lot of content. So you've got this massive roadwork, you've got this massive amount of content. What it's lacking is a transactional system, a smart transactional system that will allow for more seamless transactions across borders, across sovereign nations, right, across with trading partners. And to me, that's what blockchain will do. In real estate, there are a number of obvious ones. People are talking about title management and proof of ownership, but I think the one that is going to really disrupt the industry is in real estate is a very illiquid asset today. Sure. Very hard to finance, very hard to secure debt on. I think having portals that will allow people to buy tokens, not crypto. I mean, you'll convert from fiat to crypto to get a token, which is a really asset-based token. That will happen over time. And when that market can evolve to the point where people are as comfortable owning fractional shares of buildings, of debt, of residential units with various terms and conditions that are verified and met, when people are as comfortable on that platform as they are on eBay, you will see a massive unlocking of value in terms of the lost equity in buildings.
Again, quite possibly an increase in building, because the ability to raise capital becomes, when we make all this much more liquid, it basically turns real estate into a market in a way that it's never been before.
Maybe not more building, but building by more people and more opportunities. It's so much. Like today, the real estate development community is a opaque and large dominated industry. Yeah. And maybe what it does is it democratizes a little bit more, a much larger percentage of the audience who's able to participate in development and investment.
Do you see Vornado's role as a sort of a force for good in that way? Are you guys out there just trying to allow there to be a more democratic industry? What would you say as we begin to wrap up now? Vornado's role is really is going to be in the next couple of years. Oh, and that's right. Now, this is
they got Monahan Station up.
Monahan Station in New York, an amazing, amazing looking building.
Great development. Yeah. So we're partnering with Related and Skanska, and we're co-developing that facility. I think it's 2 more years. It'll be largely operational. But there'll be almost 1 million square feet of rentable space in that building. But to your question, we're a publicly traded company. Our fiduciary responsibility is to bring value to our shareholders. Yes. So from our point of view, from a technology perspective, we continue to look at things that will make our buildings better for our tenants, allow us to run the buildings better, run the buildings more efficiently, deliver better services. That's the business we're in.
Any last thoughts for the watchers of Conference Live and for the participants here at RealCom 2018?
Like I've always said, be patient, because these things don't happen as quickly as you ever want them to happen. And we're still living in a world, I've always been one to push APIs, connectivity, openness. The vendors have gotten a bit past that, so that at least there's an openness from the vendors to be open. And the talk about APIs, revolutionizing the way people can connect, is real, but at the end of the day, the real estate data model is a very complex data model, and the difficulty behind the scenes to get things connected properly and interfaced and integrated is still a fairly large challenge. And it's a challenge that I think is going to be bigger and bigger, because while there's consolidation in this space, you look around, there's a lot of new players, and the more building operational pieces of software that are out there, the more things need to share data points.
So be hopeful, but be aware that we've got a lot of work to do.
There's still a lot of work to do.
Robert, thank you so much. Always a pleasure.
Good to see you.
Thank you so much, Robert Entin from Vornado.